Here we go with the artist talk with Hajar. Welcome, Hajar, and thank you for being here today, and everybody else, our panel. Just going to go through our agenda for today. Just a brief introduction for people who haven't been with us for our last talk. I'm going to introduce Viva Alliance and Orange Easel, and just wanted to mention that this talk and a few more that we are planning for the future are a collaborative effort between Viva Alliance and Orange Easel. And today we're gonna hear from Hajar. She's a multidisciplinary artist who will be introduced later by Shura. After she is finished with her presentation, we're going to start our panel discussions and go through each work that we have questions for. And at the end, we encourage everybody to join in and ask questions. You can put those in the chat box, or you can turn your microphones on and just ask them. We'd love to hear you and listen to you and see you. Just a quick note about Viva. Viva is Vancouver's Iranian Visual Arts Alliance. It's a nonprofit organization comprised of a creative group of art professionals and academics dedicated to increasing opportunity and visibility for Iranian Canadian artists. And at core, Viva's values are inclusive and equitable representation, cultural exchange, and accessible artistic dialogue with our society. And both Viva and Orange Easel are grateful for the opportunities that this land has provided us to continue the support of our local artists and maintain the connections we have forged so far. And we acknowledge that we are working and living on the traditional ancestral unceded territories of Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. And a little introduction about Orange Easel. Orange Easel was founded in 2021. It is a nonprofit organization fostering local arts through diverse weekly programs, including outdoor summer activities, weekly life drawing sessions, and collaborative mural projects that transform public spaces, creating a hub for artistic collaboration. With a commitment to accessibility, Orange Easel ensures the transformative power of art reaches all, strengthening community bonds. And with that, I'm going to pass it on to Shura, and she will be introducing our presenter today. Thank you for listening, everybody.
Thank you, Shadijan, for the great, amazing presentation and introduction. Hello, everyone. And thank you for joining us in this cold, foggy winter in Vancouver. And I know it's even colder in Toronto. And we are super excited to have Hajar from Toronto here. Hajar Jun, I wanted to say a big thank you for accepting our invitation and being here today to share your creative journey with us. I will read a brief part of a long list of Hajar's achievements and bio for our guest today. Hajar Moradi's artistic journey reflects her deep commitment to art's transformative power for meaningful conversations. Exploring identity, resilience, and politics, her work spans painting, installation, and video, addressing themes like memory, displacement, and female identity. With a BFA in graphic design and illustration, she has garnered national and international acclaim, receiving awards from prestigious organizations such as Canada Council for the Arts, the Ontario Arts Council, and Canadian Screen Awards nomination for the Best Animated Short in 2023. Her animations, including The Shadow of My Life, earned recognition at various festivals such as MECAL Pro Best Short Animation at FIC Author Festival, and her exhibitions have left a lasting impact on the global art scene, showcased in prominent venues worldwide like Aga Khan Museum and Bata Shoe Museum in Toronto, the Canadian Museum for Human Rights in Winnipeg, the Harlem International Film Festival in New York, and the Barnes Film Festival in London, UK, as well as the Mexico International Short Film Festival. Wow, you're everywhere, Hajar. We take immense pride in having such a passionate artist in our community, and today we are honored to have her with us. Without further ado, we invite her to grace the stage. Hajar, here you go.
Thank you so much, Rajun, for your beautiful introduction. Thanks everyone for tuning in today for this conversation on your weekend, Saturday. And let me share my screen. Okay. So I'd like to start by thanking Viva Alliance and the Orange Giza for organizing and hosting this conversation and this talk. I'm going to start this talk by talking a little bit about myself and the subject and issues I'm interested in. And while expanding on each subject, I'll go through a couple of my past and present installation works and my creative process with you. And I'll show you one of my short animations called Creation and introduce my last short film, The Shadow of My Life. So as you all know, my name is Hajar, and Hajar is derived from the Arabic verb hajara, which means to immigrate. And ironically, I've migrated twice in my life. I was born in a war zone in Abadan, which is a southern city in Iran. And the first time we moved was when I was 1 year old. A 1-year-old baby when my parents moved from Abadan to Tehran 1 year after the beginning of Iran and Iraq war in the early 1980s. And the second time I moved from Iran, from Tehran to Toronto in my 20s. So being displaced and on the move is the story of my life and has immensely shaped my life experience and therefore my work. I like to create artworks that initiate conversation about identity, resilience, and politics concerning being and belonging. My work revolves around themes such as displacement, female straight, and resilience in times of war and oppression, and gender identity in modern society. And the subject of my works are rooted in my life experiences and struggles, from living through an 8-year-long war as a child to finding my place as a woman in Iran, which is a gender apartheid country, and surviving the darkness of depression after immigration. I found salvation in making art and creating art. And I use painting, animation, and installation to explore these topics. Throughout my creative process, I am continually drawn to the concepts of displacement, identity, and a sense of belonging. When I moved to Canada, I'm gonna pass that slower. When I moved to Canada in 2010, in order to preserve my memories of Iran, of places I lived or traveled, or of my friends, I started to paint them. As an artist, I've always been fascinated by the concept of memory and its importance in shaping our identities. This was an ongoing project. However, as I was painting them and as time passed by, some memories became foggier and started shifting due to the passage of time and new events and life experiences in my life. And this led me to wonder about the true nature of memories, their role in constructing our sense of self. These are some of the memories I painted from my life living in Iran.
Are the medium are these all acrylic paint or?
Yes, they're all the paintings are 8 by 8 inches and they're acrylic paint.
On canvas?
On wooden board.
On wooden board. Okay.
I also started to paint my new experiences in my new home, Canada. As a displaced person, and through this process, I discovered that preserving my memories is a defense mechanism for me to protect my identity. I need my experiences and my memories to feel grounded enough to be able to imagine the future. As if memories of the past and dreams of the future are woven together to create our sense of self, and enables us and motivates us to imagine new dreams and move forward towards them. And these are some memories and some examples of the memories I painted from my new home.
Are you self-taught or this is your study?
My background is in graphic design, but I started drawing and painting from when I was 14 years old. And with, like, you know, in Iran, you go to private work with masters.
Mm-hmm.
So this process led to the creation of this multimedia installation called Remember, Imagine. In this installation, I explored the interconnectedness of time, displacement, identity, and memory, and imagination. Through my experiences as an immigrant, I reflect on the fluidity and unreliability of memories and question their trustworthiness. This installation consists of 60 frames of paintings. There are 30 frames, 30 paintings on each side, depicting memories from my home, country, and from my new home. The dimensions are 8 by 8 inches, as I mentioned, and the medium is acrylic painting on wooden board. In the middle, there is this animated video that is a 5-second loop. Let's watch the animation together.
Remember. Imagine.
So the technique of the animation is a stop motion animation, and I painted 60 frames of acrylic painting to create the animation. I have one of the frames here to show you how, like 60 frames of this acrylic painting animation that made this loop.
So it's blue because here it's very purplish.
Yeah, because the video still needs to do, like, I need to do some color correction and stuff.
Okay.
I want it to be like a little bit more purplish. So the water symbolizes the memory. Scientists say a water molecule can contain information from millions of years ago, and in a way, it preserves memories. We see a drop of water falling into a water surface, but instead of dissolving into the water, the drops goes back up towards the top of the screen and exists. The first time the viewer watches the first loop, there's an element of surprise, but this becomes a memory once the loop repeats, and therefore not surprising anymore. Through this installation, I invite the audience to reflect on their own memories and their significance in shaping their identities and future dreams. My next installation that I like to talk about is Interwoven, which was about a storytelling. I like to consider myself a storyteller. I believe a storytelling is a powerful form of communication. A message that is conveyed through storytelling is more memorable and more impactful. This is true for art, in the context of activism, or even in advertising. My background from my mother's side is Bakhtiari. The Bakhtiaris are a Lur tribe who primarily are living in central and south west of Iran. Every summer, I used to go to my grandma's house in Charmahal Bakhtiyari province and hang out at her neighbor's house. And they were Bakhtiyari weavers, the neighbors, and mother and two daughters. And they let me sit with them on the loom and taught me how to make a knot on a gabbe. And I was mesmerized by all the colors and geometrical and iconic shapes of the patterns. Gabbe weaving is a traditional craft of Bakhtiyari people in Iran. What makes gabbe a unique form of art is the storytelling characteristic of gabbe. Unlike regular rugs, gabbe weavers don't have a set pattern prior to weaving the gabbe. They use their crafts to depict their surrounding landscapes or tell a story or an event that's happening in their life or in their tribe. If there is a newborn baby goat in their tribe, they weave the baby goat on the gabbe. Or if there's a wedding, for example, in their tribe, they weave a bride or a couple on the gabbe. So each gabbe is a unique piece of art that tells the story of the weaver, who is the storyteller in this context. And I use this gabbe as a storytelling characteristic to create the interwoven installation. Interwoven is a conceptual, participatory, narrative-based installation performance that celebrates the power of storytelling and human connections. So in the interwoven installation performance, I invited the visitors to contribute their own stories to this gabbe. Symbolically, by selecting the color of their yarn and the pattern of their knots, participants express their individuality. I symbolically weaved their story on the gabbe. And this was a collaborative creation where the participant and the artist had to trust each other and also trust others to be part of a unity. Interwoven invites the audience to reflect on the power of storytelling, cultural heritage, and the profound connection that can be forged through art. And my goal was to emphasize the importance of embracing diversity while fostering trust and collaboration. Interwoven debut was at Nuit Blanche in 2018 in Toronto, where I had a 12-hour performance at Batachou Museum. Later, in 2019, I performed Interwoven at Aga Khan Museum for about a month. And overall, more than 2,500 people have participated in this interactive piece, and more than 2,500 stories are interwoven to shape this collective visual narrative. And the final work, which you saw here, was exhibited for the first time last year at Durand Marchal Gallery in Montreal. So I'll let you see the final work again. I have also this fascination with moving images and animation. And I think animation is a wonderful tool and a great medium to convey a message or a story. Creation is my first animation film, short film, and it's about the creative process itself. What goes on during the creative process? For many artists, the creative process is intimidating and can be a painful endeavor. This short animation observes the process of creating a work of art in 4 steps: observation, pain, creation, and obsession. And let's watch the film together. It's only 2 minutes. My second film is called The Shadow of My Life, which tells the story of Hannah. Hannah is an artist who migrated to Canada a few years ago. However, she soon found herself struggling with depression and feeling lost in her new environment. Determined to rediscover herself, Hannah turned to lives of and works of other artists for inspiration. Through her art, she found solace and a renewed sense of purpose. And this film captures the transformative power of art and how it can save an artist from the depth of despair. The Shadow of My Life has received a number of awards and nominations, and it was nominated for Best Animation at the Canadian Screen Awards. Let's watch the trailer together.
You were speaking of darkness.
How is your sexual relationship with your husband?
What do you do when you feel depressed?
Do you smoke?
Mama!
But no friendship lasts forever. No feeling lasts forever. One day, everything comes to an end.
I have to mention that Canadian viewers can watch The Shadow of My Life on CBC Gem under the Canadian Reflection program for free. And also The Shadow of My Life will be screened at Toronto on February 22nd at Small Media. I'll post more information about the screening on my Instagram. Thank you everyone for listening to me, and feel free to ask any questions.
Thank you so much.
Let me stop sharing.
That was wonderful, Hajar.
Thank you, Azza.
Yeah, I know you have many more works, but because of the time restriction, we had to just make it shorter to just some of your works. Beautiful, beautiful, amazing practice you have. My first question, I'm going to start the questions from our board, is my curiosity is always like usually consistently centers around the interplay between form and concept. And that's why I was wondering, particularly as a multidisciplinary artist, could you elaborate on how you determine the medium for each project and make decisions regarding the aesthetic of your work? As Remember, Imagine, where you incorporated painting, video, and animation beautifully. So maybe that would be my main like focus. And yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Shurajun. I think for me, the most important thing is the concept and the idea of the work. So that is what dictates the form of and the medium of my work. For example, as you mentioned in Remember, Imagine, the work initially started with a series of painting. But as the idea was changing in my mind and basically the concept of memory and the trustworthiness were changing in my mind, I had to change the form of it too. So because a series of painting was not appropriate anymore for my idea. That's why it had to change to a multimedia installation. So I would say the form and the concept and the idea kind of dictates the form for me.
Yeah, that's interesting. And it's also as a painter, I know it's hard to really incorporate that medium, which is very static, with the medium that is time-based, and you did it beautifully. And I didn't know that the stop motion is all the frame of the paint.
Yeah,
Like
that's why I wanted to be
work.
consistent with the paintings. That's why I had to paint them. I feel like if it was digital or like 2D, maybe it wasn't consistent.
Yeah. And the painting language is also different in the stop motion and the way you did the acrylic pieces of your memories. Yeah, beautiful. Mariam, do you?
Yeah, my question is also about, I didn't know that they were the animation was also acrylic paintings. That was really that's remarkable. So actually, my question is sort of actually centered around that piece. But I think I'm more interested in the theme that runs through all of your work, which for me is a fixation on basically giving a sense of permanence to what is transient. So basically capturing fleeting moments and storing them. It's a translation that happens from the fleeting notion of time to the more accumulated, revisitable notion of time. And that's like something that your work has in common with all human endeavor. We all want to have a legacy. We all want to make memories. We all want our past to have meaning in the future. But I think it's a characteristic of your work that you actually turn that into a topic. So it's not just something that informs your work, it's one of the topics of your work. And for me, in Remember, Imagine, that it was the most obvious struggle that you had with that, how you painstakingly reproduce 60 photographs, you paint them. It's like a time capsule that is very obsessively produced. And for me, the most remarkable part actually was the stop motion animation. It's funny that you actually refer to the homeopathic belief that water has memory. For me, it reminded me of a poet, philosopher called Heraclitus, who says you can never step, Heraclitus, you can never step in the same river twice, meaning like moments pass and you can never recapture them, you can never relive an experience, but you try, like you put it on a 5-second loop. Your flowing river is on a 5-second loop and we keep on revisiting the same frame. And the same exists in all of your other works, I think, where like with Interwoven, you try to actually document a transient transactions with people into like marks in a rug, or in your film where the creation where you sort of try to immortalize a very transient process of creativity where you almost have an out-of-body experience and then it ends for each project. But what is interesting for me, I think the question that I have is, as a person who makes living histories, I think you're very uncomfortable, and it comes through with your own authorial position. It's such a responsibility to create living histories, especially if you're a socially conscious person who's also interested in collective histories and collective memories and collective change. So you find ways to interrogate your own authorial accuracy, that responsibility. So in the first one, you say, hey, these are my personal memories and these are reproductions. They're not even the actual pictures. In the second one, you sort of relinquish control and Interwoven, which I think Shadi is interested in asking about. In the last one, you come up with a very impersonal kind of universal aesthetic. So, so in each way, you sort of problematize your own authorial position. So my main question is, how do you think about that? Like, how does your concerns with historical accuracy and faithfulness to something, but having subjectivity and creative authority, that negotiation, how does it change your aesthetic from work to work? How do you navigate that as a creator who has control? So yeah, collective versus personal histories, historical accuracy versus creative license. How do you navigate that, especially in a historic storytelling context?
That's a very interesting observation. I think for in memory, in remember, imagine work, what I did, that I initially started documenting everything. And then as time passed by, I started questioning my authority and my memories and everything about it, because they were not reliable. They were changing, like ever changing. Even what I paint now, if it's a memory, 3 years from now, my feeling would be changed totally towards that memory. So you are right. Even in Interwoven, I try to limit my control over the work and kind of gave the role of the narrator to myself rather than the creator. But I think this changes in my animation works, because in animation, I need to be my style, at least, I need to be a control freak. I have to control every aspect of each frame. Every 3 seconds they have that it's indicated in the storyboards, because I am working with a big team and all of us should be in the same boat when we're working on the movie, and it has to be consistent. So I think that's different for me. And also in animation, it gives me the ability to tell my story through other characters with different names. So it gives me, it's more, I don't know, maybe I have more freedom to tell my story. But when it comes to more intimidating interaction with people, and it's about myself, my name is on it, in the animation, my characters they have their own name and they're different people. I tell my story through them. But when it's my own work, I think I would like to have less control and authority, I guess, because I don't trust my memory, for example, in the remember imagine work, or like it depends on the content. But I think it's liberating too for me, because I'm, like I said, at my work as a control freak, and I like to experience that freedom.
Yeah,
That's very interesting.
yeah.
It comes
I
through.
like to know more.
It's really interesting too, because I totally had it. This is not a pipe sort of flashback with your paintings in Remember Imagine, where the control freakness comes, the obsession comes with accuracy, documentation, capturing all these moments, holding on to them and everything. The obsession, the control comes, but also you very actively try to put a distance between yourself and the past that you're trying to capture. You're like, you could have hung the pictures,
Yeah.
but you didn't do that. You put a distance. You're like,
It's true.
yeah. So it's really interesting what happens. And I feel like the crux of it is the fact that you're building history, that you're actually dealing with facts, and accuracy is an issue. So it's not purely imagination, it's actually a process of remembrance. And I think that I think there's a connection between your authorial position and temporality in your work. These two things are related to each other, which is remarkable.
Interesting. Thank
But
you.
can I just
thinking,
ask? Oh, sorry, sure, go ahead.
Go ahead,
Sorry.
Amir. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. This is very interesting for me, because I'd like to know, when you are trying to push yourself from, in your own words, your identity, the images of your past, to something that you don't have control over, something that others have control over. Was that a scary experience for you? Were you scared of doing this? And then how did you feel after this new identity where others are having input on your work?
I think, yeah, I try to
do you like this new
want to
identity
separate.
or?
It's not a new identity, I would say. It's me trying to put myself in the positions that I'm not comfortable with, because like I said, I'm a control freak in my animation works. And I didn't want to separate myself, for example, and Remember Imagine from my past, but I questioned them. I questioned this remembering is not accurate for me
You
because
wanted to somehow relinquish the responsibility for accuracy.
exactly.
Yeah.
I'm not, this is not accurate. I'm
Yeah.
already telling you that because
Yeah.
the memory is fluid and it's runaway, it's not trustworthy.
Yeah. That's
I
from
just wanted to add that the mark making in your work is also it comes through, like whatever you mentioned, it comes through your mark making in those paintings that are still and installed on the two sides, and then your mark making, neat mark making in your stop motion. And I feel like it's also, this is very similar for any multidisciplinary artist. They have their comfort zone with a medium that they have more background and practice in there. But then when it comes to new media that they're using, they have more freedom. And then also you want to question
That's
that
true.
Yeah.
control. Yes.
Thanks so much for that.
Moving on to Interwoven, I have another question about that. I'm just curious. I think you just mentioned briefly about the color choices and like the color palette you had when it came to the performance, and people were there present. Could you just elaborate a bit more, decode if there is any symbolism behind the color choices, or if there is any background that you were specific in, or what was the result for you? Did you have any new observation after the gabba was woven?
I think for me, in terms of choice of color, I wanted the gabba to have an earthy color base. But other than that, I think I gave the audience, the participants 8 different colors, including black and white. And I want the color to be saturated, vibrant, and very different from each other. But I think the symbolism and meaning behind the colors were very relative to the audience, and people could have their own significance of colors in the work, but in their participation. So
I love the way the colors at the end, like at the bottom of the gap, there is a vividness of marks, like the fact, and goes back to what you said about control and freedom. Like you just lost the
let it
control at the
go.
bottom of that, and then when it goes to the eye, it becomes more solid, right, and clean. So it is even there in mark making in the gap.
And I'm really interested in your piece, the Interwoven Gabba piece, installation performance. And for me, what stood out really was the fact that the process of Gabba making, as you mentioned, is very arbitrary. And when people sit down to weave the Gabba, they see something out of their home, or there's an event, or there's a feeling or flower or whatever there is, they just weave it in without any context of design or planning within it. And I think you were really authentic to that process when you brought in that arbitrariness, giving control and authority to the audience, bringing it into your piece and not knowing what the outcome would be, what the final result would look like. And I think you briefly told us about this, but being in that position, how does it affect your creative process? Like how do you go on and finalize that piece with those input in?
Yeah, like you mentioned, I wanted to give a role of the narrator to myself in Interwoven, so I didn't want to have any control over anything, basically. But I think that I find that experience, it was really interesting because I get to have the experience of talking to all the participants and they would share their stories with me and their significance of choosing their colors. And I think the whole process was very liberating for me. And I thought I learned how to let it go in some works.
That's amazing. it's really difficult to do that, to give authority to other people to just come in and tell you what to use, what colors to use. So that's brave, also very creative and authentic. I really appreciate it.
I wonder, as Shadi said, I wonder, could it have gone wrong? Like, I think that's part of, like, you don't know how it ends, but I have never woven a gabba before. Could it all have gone wrong based on the colors that people give you, based on people's input?
That's
No.
the thing. I don't think there's a going wrong. Like what is wrong, what is right. And the whole point of this work was about collectiveness of it, right?
I do have a question about this interwoven piece. So the loom itself, the frame, you have a few icons on it, the woman icons. Can you talk about it? Just I'm very interested to know when in your artwork or your practice you start using icons, because I can actually see this same footprint in your animation, and I want to talk about it later. Like, the use of iconography, the emotions that they trick in an audience, the story behind it. Like, because when I look at the loom, it has story, obviously has a story, because the icon on it, and then what you're making on it. It definitely goes beyond just one frame, and it turns into like a short animation, still animation probably. So can you a little open on that?
Yeah, for sure. For me, the loom was part of the artwork. And there are two women. I draw two women on it. For me, they're representing all the weavers, like Bakhtiari weavers, who were weaving throughout the history. And I wanted them to witness me narrating other people's story. I don't know if that makes sense. But yeah, I wanted them to be with me.
Can you guys hear baby in my audio input? Okay. I got a little wait for a second.
One last question about this piece. Did you think that the performative aspect of this, like the process and this single, like kind of, because it was a process-based, really process-based piece. Did you think after that, and I think this was your first performance experience. So how did you feel that there was any impact afterwards in your other pieces that came after? So did you find it, or even the fact that it was a collective piece, did you feel that also impacted your
Hajar, don't we just letting everybody know about what that process started and how it started and ended before we dive down into how it's affected your practice, so that people know how you did it?
So I think the work started, like all my works starts with a little bit of research and the loom, and because in Iran there are like different methods of weaving your rug. Like if you're from Central Iran or from Tabriz or from South, like the knots, weaving like making the knots, and all of that is different. Even I don't know what is it called in English, chelle keshi, or everything is could be different. So it started with that, the idea of like this storytelling characteristic. And I think back to Shura's question, yes, performance was part of a big aspect of this work. Because I wanted to have that interaction of sharing their stories, and most of the people wanted to wait and see me weaving their cars, and because I dedicated myself to SAT for certain hours. For example, in Nuit Blanche, it was 12 hours performance. So it was very important. And as an artist who is used to create art in their own cave, it was very challenging for me, but also liberating.
Did you find that maybe the works came after, like you were more comfortable include collective or include yourself in it?
Yeah, I think with every challenge that you put yourself through, you become a little bit stronger.
Exactly. Yes.
and more comfortable in your practice, and that helped, like in terms.
Yeah, as you mentioned, like I feel like especially painting is such an individual, hidden process that it's so like brings anxiety to be like performative, and I'm myself, I can never do that.
Wait,
It's
I didn't get my answer. This is not fair. So the object, the loom itself.
I talked about the women and how what they
Yeah.
Wait, no,
I
okay.
think
No, I
I
agree. No, I agree. But there's another part. So sometimes when different people look at different objects, they have different memories of it. So it makes them feel different. For me, the loom does have some scary images or scary history. Like when you look at the frame, you can't help but thinking, okay, it does look like other objects too. It's a little scary, especially for someone who hasn't ever done looming. It could look like a guillotine. It could look like a prison. It's a very heavy image. And then when you think about the process of making the rug or the gape, with the blade coming down, cutting the fabric after every knot, so it gives you an objective effectiveness, right? So can you tell me about the feedback you got about the loom, the frame, the whole setting?
And this was the first time that I got the feedback that it is scary, for sure.
Really?
Yes. And yeah, a lot of people asked about the women, and like I said and mentioned before, I talked about like those women maybe in the pictures like that because it's 3D and the women are like the drawings are continued all over, like in the back and everywhere. So, and in the performance, people could walk all around it and see the full face and stuff. But yeah, mostly I got the question about those women and the eye, basically.
Well, if you were to talk about the experience of knotting for hours and hours and hours, is that just a pure pleasure and joy, or is there like a little
for me,
back pain in it too?
It is very therapeutic. Weaving is very therapeutic for me.
I never had this experience, so this is very interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I think a repetitive action that you do without thinking about the result is very therapeutic.
So the icons of those women on the loom, are they like relaxed women? Are they free? Are they empowered? Is that the image you're trying to convey?
For me, they're mythical characters. Like they're weavers throughout the history. But that's my perception. I don't want to dictate anything. Like you can think of this as, you can be scared of this and think of it as like a YouTube feed.
I think
you are
when
free to
Amir mentioned, I think when Amir mentioned the scary, he's talking about, that's what I got. I think he's talking about the loom, like the concept behind loom in general, because it's like first it brings stretch the carpet, but then once you just they detach it from the loom, it has the freedom, right? So then that frame is just kind of, it can be a support, you can just interpret it as a support, but then for someone like him is like a kind of cage or something that is kind of taking the freedom away.
You're tied
But I
down to it,
also think
basically.
that I also answering Amir, I think the eyes of those women on the loom and then the eye that you captured at the end of the gap, but they have this interesting dialogue and of gaze with you while you're performing, and maybe that's why you ended up having the eye in the center.
No, for sure. The fact that they're looking at me, it tells me that they have a story to tell me. Like that was my first contact, no doubt. And then I was curious, okay, is this a happy story? Or is it a scary story?
Anyway.
Because the story might be traumatizing.
Exactly.
Some happy. I don't ever know, but all of them are woven in this piece.
Yeah. And then this is something I do want to talk about the animation piece. Are we ready to move to animation or? Okay. Can I start?
For sure.
I think I'm the most excited person right now.
Yes, you're the animator.
Okay, so yeah, that's true. My background is in 2D animation, for anybody who didn't know. So I started from 2D animation, and that has been my passion. I grew up on Cartoon Network, by the way. That's my actual background. Anyways, so this type of iconography, using icons to deliver your message in a very abstract way, we do see that in your animation from the very beginning. I can almost say that we are not following a story, we are just following icons and their meanings. Would you say, or are you saying a story, or is it just you have a message, very specific message that are in every frame or in every scene, you're just showing them by icons? Which one is it, story or non-story narrative?
I think by icons, you mean like symbolism, visual symbolism?
Yeah. So, like, for example, you start by the beach, and then you're looking at the sun, and then those sun seeds are coming to you. And then when you go to
I
next
think a
and
little
next
bit
and
of
next.
both. At first, like by showing all this surroundings and nature, the character is in the phase of observation. That's why you see like, and it's very
True.
personal. All of my animations are very personal. So you have to see that the meaning can change like with the viewer, with the perceptions of the viewers, right?
Okay.
But for me, it's but that's why I divided the creative process in that specific in creation in 4 stages. So that was the observation stage, for example.
That's the interesting part for me, because you're putting your character, the woman lady character, in a very hostile looking environment. And then if you go back to the beginning of our talk, when I said I'm going to come back to your Freud, Freud says there is a definition: hostile external environment. It is a process in which external and internal painful stimuli replicate each other endlessly, but in a limited space. So, and when I'm looking at your animation, I see icons and I see that, okay, these icons together are giving me some meanings that are endless, that I can just repeat watching and watching them again. And there is no story, so I'm pretty sure the icons themselves are the story. So I'd like to know why you picked those icons, and then what meanings behind them you see in them. Like the tree itself, the sun, like, and then we come to a point where the pregnancy and the birth happens. And then
yeah, so that's first thing for me is like all the representation of the surroundings. So it's not like the mountain has a specific meaning for me, or the trees or the water. So that stage is observation for me. But being in this experience, for sure, for me, like the creative process, it's a painful process. And what I'm trying to say is that it is so painful, and that's why you get obsessed with your artwork at the end. And that was my intention with the film. And I'm not even claiming that every creative process is like that, because for some people, for some artists, the creative process is very playful and happy process, but not for me. And talking with some fellow artists, other fellow artists, many artists share the same sentiment with me, that this can be intimidating, the process, and painful.
And then there are 2 different types of pain I can see in this short. Like there are moments in the film that my body actually hurts faster than my mind does. Like when you're pushing out the artwork or the unknown object, like my body goes through pain much faster. It is. So that makes me think, okay, what is that object? Like, is it a person, or is it a thought, or is it an unknown? Is it a strange thing? What is it that you have to go through this pain?
For me, it's the artwork. It's the artwork itself, and the character goes into it and get lost into it, basically. Get trapped into it. And that's the trap of, for me, that's the trap of being obsessed with your artwork. I can tell you the intention, like what started this animation. So several years ago, some people approached me and they wanted to buy my paintings and some of my works, some drawings. And although I needed the money a lot, I couldn't let them go. I couldn't sell my works. I was so obsessed with them that I couldn't sell my works. And right now I'm announcing I'm not like that anymore, and you can approach my artworks. But that started whole process, you know, that obsession.
Okay.
Can I just jump in just because the other question is very related? Like, I feel like when I watched that animation, I was thinking of like the physical journey we undergo as a woman, like in different stage of our life, is incredibly significant and often discussed with hesitation, right? And maybe that's where the pain that you mentioned comes from, and also is like very similar to that the process of creating. And do you believe there is this parallel story, like aspect of the creative process, and which is not easy to discuss? Like I feel like it was even hard right now for you to discuss it further, like deeper, right? Or even maybe it's not even possible to say it with vocabulary or words.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. I think for me, the whole process, like I am scared of a black canvas, a black paper. I think a blank paper is the first ideas are and articulating them into words or into visuals are the most difficult stage of the process for me. And I wanted to visualize this pain, and like symbolically, I made this paralleling with being pregnant and having like giving birth to an artwork and being obsessed with it, like you're obsessed with your children and can't let them go.
I mean, I think it's also it has something similar to what Mariam was mentioning about the authority of your, like when you just forget about it. And at the same time, you have that obsession, but then you want to also reject it, right? Reject that obsession.
Yeah, I know.
For me, it's also really interesting. Sorry, going back to the whole, I have a little obsession too. My background is in temporal anxiety and authority. So for me, the images that you chose, so when she actually enters that space through the mirror, it's really remarkable, but that the impersonality of it all. So you're describing a very personal process. By the way, any creative work you do is like giving birth. I mean, but so you're talking about a very personal, very private process, but then the images you choose to the mosaic of images inside that space are all very sort of universal, carnal, physical things. It's not very personal or private to your creative experience necessarily. It's very bodily, universal. So I think that also for me, that was a part of it, that okay, another distance. So basically she's trying to sort of translate this physical personal transient process into something that everybody can relate to, and sort of disowning it a little bit. So
Yeah, I like your observations. Yeah,
Well,
that's
so yeah, that part I think about it a lot when I look at your film, and then that sense of endlessness when we're looking at those tiny small animations next to each other. So does that mean that everything is painful? Is it life? Is that your message?
for me the endlessness is scary, definitely. Something without that I can see the end of it. It could be like even the huge body of water. I know something that I can't see the end of it. Yeah. But yeah,
grass field.
for me the last stage was like being lost in that word of obsession, which is not, I feel like it's not good or reproductive for an artist.
Yeah, and the shift of your style from the beginning of the animation to a collage, unpredictable style at the end, like when the pregnancy happens, it just the whole that even shift is also saying a lot about the concept of the work.
It definitely worked for me. Like I saw it, and I really liked it. I really like how it looks.
Thank you.
It's
Is that paint? Sorry, is that ink on paper or is it digital?
Digital.
Okay.
Digital frame by frame animation.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, my question was answered throughout this whole segment, really. I was curious about your choice of word obsession for the last segment of your short film, and you've answered that perfectly. I I feel like for people who see this video, this process can be a little bit surprising, a little bit out of the ordinary. Like, do all artists go through this process? Like, why is art making so hard? Or why is it this melancholy, like hallucinative process is happening, and the artist is just maybe sometimes lost in the process. And you know, like Mariam said, I think the images that you choose, the gestures that you choose in the little frames are relatable, but are also like gestures that we don't really fixate on, or we don't remember, or it's like not a normal gesture. Maybe it's like something that you might do when you're alone and you don't really realize of what you look like, and that makes it more deep and more personal for me, that you put it out there for audience to see. And I think it's very brave as an artist to show that process. Did you get any feedback about this, the mood and the feel of your video from audience?
I got some of the question that I got was like shared with the question that you asked about the obsession, about the last scene. But overall, I think, like I mentioned, talking to other fellow artists, a lot of them share this sentiment that they go through the same process. So I think
Suffering
it's
process.
personal, but at the same time universal.
Gotcha. Thank you so much. That's great.
Moving to the shadow of my life, which is your the last piece we talked about, and people can watch it later. We're gonna share the link. I mean, not the link where they can watch it. The source that they can watch it. I had a question about it. That when I watched it, I was intrigued by the inspiration behind that piece and From Persepolis by Marjan Satrapi. And I'm pretty sure you got that, received many questions or feedback about the similarity or the inspiration. Could you just elaborate, and maybe that would be fun to hear more. What do you think? Like, what was the reason?
So the shadow of my life basically is a tribute to all the artists that have inspired me so far, like throughout my life. It mentions 10, 11 artists directly and indirectly in my film. So I have two scenes that I mentioned: Andra Tarkovsky. I have a René Magritte scene, the painting that I said, this is not a pipe. And I have like mentioning of the Wanderers Over the Sea by Frederick. I have like some of the Van Gogh's works mentioned into my art, and the whole inspiration of this video, like one of the artists that I am very much inspired by, is Marjan Satrapi, and her comics, and also Persepolis. So I wanted to show this appreciation by following the black and white style of it, but at the same time adding my own touch and visual characteristic to it.
Did you ever had any contact? Like, do you know if she knows about it, or?
I would love to. Maybe
Yeah, she seems to be approachable.
Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully soon.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any other question about the last piece?
No, I think we're all done with our questions. If Amir, are you finished with your questions? Amir Khan?
Yes. Yes, I am.
Okay. Then we'll move on to the audience. If anybody wants to turn on their mics or turn on your video and speak to us, we would love that. We'll give you a little bit of time and a break to our presenters and panel.
If you feel more comfortable like writing it in the chat box, please do that and we'll read it out for you.
Or just tell us what was your favorite artwork.
Yeah.
Mine was creation.
I think mine I still remember Imagine, but I love all of them.
Can I say Interwoven? All throughout, every piece is a favorite, but
I have a question.
perfect.
Salam Naja.
Hello, hi.
I saw your creation. Unfortunately, I didn't see your carpet works, but I really admire that piece.
Thank
Very,
you.
very beautiful piece. But
Thank you so much.
I saw your the short animation creation. I was wondering, why did you choose two different, basically, mark making and your main character and basically main story was that woman beside the beach and get pregnant, and instead of baby, basically she birthed a mirror and she see herself and she go through that darkness. I think that was the main part of the movie. And you put some side, basically, stories that I couldn't understand, like those trees and those birds, and it's not even with the style. And I think it helps the movie for me. I'm sorry to say, because it was very poignant and beautiful, that part. But when you shifted to that, and again shifted to the mountain and that bird, I think was very distraction instead of bringing main focus and bring one as a whole. It wasn't whole. And I was wondering, is it purposeful or whatever answer you have? Thank you.
You guys, am I the only one who missed the bird? I don't remember.
The bird comes from the mountain.
I think the beginning is the opening part.
Yeah.
This is their
So the opening part
representation.
is colorful. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that was intentional. So first, like at the observation phase, we see a more colorful environment, but then we move on to the inside, like inside world of the artist and the creation process. And these are all symbolics and can vary relative to whoever watches it, right? So you're entitled to to observe whatever you think. But for me, this process was a personal exploration of a creative process.
I also go ahead, sorry. Go ahead, Masa.
Just I was wondering which part was personal part.
After the colorful images are done and we see her giving birth.
Why didn't you could use the same style of
because I wanted to.
Those for just you wanted to. Okay, that's that. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, to give a recap, can you like give us those stages that you defined and just name them one more time?
Yeah. So it was observation, I think pain, creation, and obsession.
So basically you go from the outside in gradually. So
Yeah. That's why the color becomes less and less, and the board becomes darker.
and tighter.
Yeah.
Can I add something? I feel like when I watched it for the first time, I was also surprised that the beginning part is very representational, like very normal, the storytelling of animation style that we are so used to it. But then it just suddenly shifts to a very like newer, strange that I'm not quite comfortable with. And I have to watch it again. And then when I think about the creation process, and then when we have new ideas or style that no one really is familiar in the art world, and not even, and also sometimes people are not, and they don't understand your work for a while, like maybe till you die, or even if you're lucky after your death, people start knowing you, and sometimes they don't. So I think this strangeness of that shift of the style, and I think the difference is kind of maybe that's the same thing that happens through creative process, or when you build something. And I think that was also my understanding after I watched it a few times.
Yeah, and I wanted to also purposefully have like a more realistic I know representation of the artwork, and then make you uncomfortable by going through that painful process, and make all the colors, like limiting all the colors and just sticking to black and white.
Thanks for your answer, Hajar.
I hope that answered Mohsen and John's question too.
Thank you. Thank you.
Just waiting for a few more in. Anybody wants to jump in?
Do you have any plans for future animations?
Yes, I am working on a script. Actually, it's a feature. And I'm very scared, as you know my creative process.
That's good news.
Yeah.
That's great.
Hajar, have you ever done experimental animation, more experimental? Because I find the second part of this animation also a bit experimental.
Yes. Actually, I am really interested in doing experimental animation. I've done some practices before, but I would love to explore actually some more works with that side.
Yeah, when you mentioned about control, having control and losing control, I was thinking doing experimental, like I'm just a beginner of doing that. But it feels, for me, I'm opposite, because I have more control in painting, because it's like a older practice for me and I'm more comfortable with the medium. But then stop motion is just this freedom of being in the moment and not thinking about any storytelling or anything. So it's just that's a very liberating for me. Yeah,
that is. Yeah,
If you were to
animation, if it's not
know,
sorry,
I should have let you finish. If you were to let us know where we can follow up with your animation progress, where should we go? Is it, or do you have an Instagram?
Yes, I do.
Updates, like where can we follow you?
Yeah, on Instagram would be the best.
And you promise you tell us when the next animation is coming on
Yes,
Instagram. That's why
I think it's gonna take a while. I have to find a lot of fundings, because a feature animation is gonna be like.
you can also post your message us your website if you.
Exactly, sure. I'm gonna leave my Instagram and my website here.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Hajar. That was helpful.
Thank you. There you go.
Perfect.
So, last call for comments and questions.
Just want to thank you, Hajar, for being here today with us, and it was amazing. It was eye-opening, and it's just thank you for
The
letting
best Saturday.
diving into your work a little bit.
Thank you so much for inviting me and hosting this event, and thanks everyone else who listened to us.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Shura, Mariam, Amirjan, thank you so much. Everybody, thanks for listening in.
Thank you all.
I think we're
Thank
gonna
you.
Nice afternoon.
Have a lovely Saturday, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks,
You
Hajar.
too.
Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Bye.